When thinking about my family history, I thought about how each family gathering we would have a large spread of Italian food, the Italian language being spoken loudly across the dinner table, and classic Italian music being played in the courtyard. It was this which was my understanding of family history. Upon writing a question to inspire my historical inquiry, I came across something I did not know. Why did my ancestors leave their home country? It was this question that led me to a story of war, love, and happiness. But first, here's a little family history. For as long as I've known, the Schepis name has had its roots in Italy. After quite a lot of digging around, I located a beautiful piece of family history which describes the origins of the family name. It states that the name Schepis was derived from the Italian word Scheppi, which comes from the French word kepi, which is an item of clothing worn during war. The Schepises originated in Santa Lucia del Mela and had quite an influence in the surrounding area. They were involved in many industries in the small town. The most famous was my great-great-great-grandfather, who was a professional ice skater, but that's another story altogether. The Schepis name was so well known that they even had a family vault, as seen in this picture. This raised another question for me. If the family was so well ingrained into the community, why move to Australia? Well, this is where the war comes into the story. Due to World War I, my great-grandfather moved from Santa Lucia del Mela in search of a more stable and consistent way of life with his beautiful wife, Lola. They decided to move to Port Said, Egypt. This is where my grandfather was conceived in 1921 and grew up until the age of 18. What was equally as interesting for me to discover was that my grandmother's parents had chosen the same destiny, which landed my grandmother and my father on the same street in Port Said. My grandmother was conceived in 1934. They grew up together, playing in the streets, until one day they were forced to leave as a result of the end of World War II and President Nasser's creating a strict policy against European citizens, ensuring that they all had to leave Egypt. As a result, my grandfather had to choose from Argentina, Chile, or Australia. Evidently, he chose Australia. Meanwhile, my grandmother chose to live in England for 10 years, until 1955, where she decided to leave England's cold climate for a new life in sunny Sydney, Australia. My grandparents reconnected in Australia after some time apart, to which they got busy forming a family which comprised 4 young Italian boys, one being my father. This had a knock-on effect which resulted in over 20 grandchildren. I guess my perspective of family history has now changed as I realised that from something so tragic such as the atrocities of the Great War, something beautiful can emerge, which would result in 2 young Italian and now Egyptian citizens falling in love and building an empire of Schepises in Australia, whom are all extremely close and thankful for the way of life that they have here in Australia.
When these feelings run high, I'm gonna feel alive, like the rebirth that comes from within inside. I've got insight, fuck pride, I'm a